Many leaders today have to influence without having any positional authority. We live in a world of virtual teams, right, where the teams are all over the world, or all over the city, or all over the country, and you have to influence without necessarily being able to stand over somebody and command and control them in terms of what to do. And you need that influence to expand. We'll show you today some of the things that we've learned to help leaders expand their influence. And so we would define leadership as the ability to influence others to achieve sustainable results. Why do you think we say to achieve sustainable results? Surely you can influence people in lots of ways, right? If I threaten you, that will influence you. If I bully you, that will influence. If I yell at you, that will influence. Why do you think that we talk about sustainable results when we define leadership and influence? We want people to choose to follow us as leaders, not to be afraid of us. Okay? And sustainable results is when people choose, when they come back, when they contribute, when they volunteer. It's very easy to get short-term results by controlling people, but when you unleash them, when you free them, that's when we get sustainable, continuous results. And I want to introduce you to a young woman named Amy. Amy is a first-time manager. Now, Amy's not a real person, but I've met lots of Amy's, and I think you will have met lots of women and men like Amy too, okay, in your work. She's a first-time leader, and she got promoted into her job because she was so capable. She was very, very good. And she did a lot of work. So her boss said, I'm going to promote her. Now here's the problem. Amy, nobody's trained Amy how to be a leader. And now she has a team of 6 people. Have you met Amy before? Okay. And she is now trying to control every single thing that her people do. And she's become a micromanager. Are you familiar with that term, a micromanager? She's like a helicopter. She hovers over people, right? If they do something, she rewrites it. Oh, that's not good enough. Give it to me. And she redoes it. Do you think her people like her or not like this? Yeah. They don't like it, okay? All right, let me introduce you to another manager. This is Jim. Jim was in a large retail store, and he became the manager of that store. And everyone said, oh, Jim must be such a good manager. Except Jim was just lucky. He had a good location. He had lots of customers coming in and out. Jim actually wasn't responsible for the success, but nobody realized that. The store was doing well, and they thought that Jim was a good manager. So what did they do? They took Jim from this high-performing store, and they put him into a terrible store. And they said, Jim, turn that store around. Okay, so you see this a lot in retail, right? Somebody's doing work really well in one location, they take you, they put you into another location. But it didn't go well. In fact, Jim was really just lucky Jim in that first store, right? And now he's exposed. He doesn't have a leadership framework. And so what does Jim try and do? He tries to do everything himself. He gets in at 6 o'clock in the morning. He works all day. He does everything from bringing all the carts in from outside, unloading the trucks, telling everybody what to do, trying to do all the customer service. Jim is carrying that store on his back. Now, we met a Jim, and when we met Jim, he'd been working for 16 days straight. He hadn't had a weekend, and he had not had a vacation day in over 1 year. Okay? Jim was going to burn out, and his store was still failing. All right. Third one. This is Gail. And Gail is a mean, reactive boss. Now, I'm not going to ask you if you know the Gales of the world, because you might have a mean, reactive boss right now, okay? So we don't want to get anybody in trouble. But Gail is like a hurricane. She comes in and she starts yelling orders and she starts yelling at her people, and everything is a drama. Everything is frantic and has to be done right now. Gail works 60 to 80 hours every week, and she expects her people to do the same thing. Okay? Now, the people above Gail kind of like her because she's getting a lot of results. But the people below Gail, they're frightened of her. They're thinking about quitting. They have anxiety. They have a sick pit in their stomach when they come to work every day. She's extremely reactive. Now, we have some pictures of these managers here on the page, and there's a lot more managers that I could introduce you to. There's Amy and Jim and Gail, who we met. There's Steve here, who was promoted to a very senior position, but doesn't really have the skill set yet, and is very afraid that he's going to fail. This here is Ed, and Ed, he just can't say anything. He can't give performance feedback. He can't say anything tough, right? He's the opposite. He's so nice to everybody that he just gets completely railroaded all the time. And then there's Sujata here, who is in charge of a global team, and nobody reports into her, and she feels like she can't influence anybody. Now, like I said, none of these people are the real people, but we've met thousands of people like this. And I bet you've got some in your own organizations, right? But you know what? Can I just be honest? Sometimes I've been elements of these different managers. Have you seen it in yourself? Okay? When we have to influence people and we don't know how to do it, we can do some very dysfunctional things. And I've done them, and you've probably done them too. These are not bad people, but they're people pressed. Pressed for time, pressed to get results, and we resort to some bad behaviours. Okay, at Franklin Covey, as I said, we have talked to many, many leaders, and we've done thousands of surveys, millions of surveys. And in all the data that we've gathered, we've actually found that there's two main reasons why leaders fail. Now, they look different. Do you remember all of these leaders look a little bit different? But if you boil it down to what's really going on, there are two main reasons. First one, they don't know how to manage themselves. Okay? These are the Gales of the world. Now, this can look everything from, I don't know how to manage my time, I don't know how to manage my temper, I don't know how to manage my moods, I don't know how to manage my ethics, right? When we talk about ethics, people who have had very serious ethical violations, and they, you know, the Jeffrey Skillings at Enron, a huge company in the US, that completely collapsed because of ethics violations. So at some level, there's a personal failure. I'm not managing or leading myself. I'm not living by the principles of effectiveness of a good human being. That's the first reason. Here's the second one. They don't know how to get work done through other people. Now, there's a lot of other things, right? At the end of the day, these are the two biggest reasons that we see leaders fail. They either can't manage themselves and or they can't manage other people and get work done through others. So here's what I'd like you to think about is, what is poor leadership costing you? Now, as I mentioned, you've probably got some leaders like this in your organization, and they're costing you something. So I'd like you at your tables, if you haven't already met the other people who are at your table, introduce yourself, and then let's talk about these three questions. What problems are caused by these managers? And then, do you see these kinds of problems in your own organization? Now, I'm not asking you to give away trade secrets, but maybe you've got a whole bunch of new leaders coming in, or maybe you've got a group of very senior leaders who have a very old-fashioned way of thinking about leading. Okay, so where might you see some of these things show up? And then, what do you think it might be costing you? And that could be lots of things: time, money, productivity, what kinds of things do you think that this core leadership is coming to? So introduce yourselves at your tables and let's answer these things. What do you think is the one thing that your competition cannot copy or take from you? It's your culture. That's right. And who is the most critical leverage point in developing a culture? It's the leader. A few years ago, we did a very large project with the US military. And they were trying to change the behaviour of 1 million enrolled or enlisted servicemen in the Navy. Moving from a very command and control kind of leadership to much more frontline empowerment. You think about trying to change the behaviour of 1 million people, it's pretty overwhelming. And that's what we're talking about. That's why the world's best companies are realising that no matter what business they're in, their real business is in building leaders. And so we're going to show you a little bit about what we've learned over the last 25 years today about building leaders and about getting business results through building leaders. So for 25 years, we've measured employee engagement. And let's go back to Amy. Do you remember she's our very junior manager? I want to start with her because I think it's really conservative to start with her. And then, I think you can see that there's a lot more. So first of all, Amy so far, in the first 9 months of her career, has racked up $12,000 in overtime costs for her team. Now, in some companies, that's not that big a deal, but nowadays in most companies, that's significant. $12,000 is a lot. Here's the second thing. Because she's micromanaging and redoing everybody's work, she's missed some very important deadlines. She's in charge of packaging, and all of their packaging is made in China. And because she's missed deadlines, they now have to pay rush fees, right? Rather than having 6 weeks lead time, they've only got 2 weeks, and it costs a lot more. Here's the third thing, and one of the things that we talked about. Her head designer quit. He said, I don't have to work with this. And sometimes it can be very hard to estimate what does a lost person cost us. Now, Tower's Parent, which is a consulting firm, has made some pretty good estimates of this. And they say that losing somebody costs anywhere between 1 to 2.5 times their annual salary, depending on how senior they are. And those costs are incurred when somebody leaves. They tend to take all that intellectual capital with them, right? They walk out the door, they take all their sales leads, they take all their contacts, they take their credibility, and they go to a different company. Now, Amy's head designer was making around $80,000 a year, and he's now gone. So we're estimating that that's costing, for her to replace him, around $120,000 additional dollars. Here's the last one, and this is often hard to quantify. But in teams like this, morale goes down. Have you noticed that? People are really disengaged. I remember one day having a conversation in a session like this, and a woman came up to me on the break, and she said, Amy is my boss, except she's 60 years old. She's not the only one, right? There's a lot of them. And when we start adding up how much they're really costing, these people cost us millions and millions of dollars. Poor leadership, I think, is one of the great unaddressed business issues of our day. Let me share a couple of upsides about leadership. First of all, leaders that have really good leadership skills. So we just talked about all the bad ones and how much they cost. Really good leaders have a very positive payoff. Corporate Leadership Council, which is a consulting firm in the US, they found that the very best leaders are 50% more likely to outperform revenue and 80% more likely to outperform profit expectations. Because of all the mistakes that Amy made, they don't make them. They engage their people, they listen better, they help get more productivity, etc. So we need a new mindset. Yesterday's leader, and this is the leader coming through in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, came through a very command and control style of leadership, right? And they were like this person here. They're the coxswain. They're sitting at the front, they shout out controls, and everybody does exactly what they want. And that is the easiest form of leadership. The problem is we don't live in that world anymore. anymore. This is the world that we live in, right? It's like you're going down these incredible rapids and everybody's got a paddle and everybody's yelling at each other in terms of what they're supposed to do. And we have to build a leader that can adapt to that today. Now, what we've found is that most leaders lack a framework. And let me tell you a quick story about this. At Franklin Covey, we do lots of leadership training. And we held a training class with a company, and we had some hostages in that training. Do you know what a hostage looks like in a training session? I can tell you because I've met them a few times. They don't want to be there. And they let you know. They're resentful. They shut down. And there was a hostage sitting in that session. At the end of the first day, and I could tell that his demeanor was changing. At the end of the first day, he came up to me and he said, I need to apologize because I really didn't want to be here today, but I have a different feeling about it. He said, I'm the vice president of sales for my company. And I'm the VP because I'm good at selling. But you know what? I don't like people very much, and I don't want to be a manager. And every time I get promoted, they promote me into positions where I have to keep managing people. And he said, I don't like it because I don't know how to do it. If I'm really honest, I don't know how to do it. And I've never had a framework. Nobody showed me the framework. I'm going to show you, after we've had some lunch, what our framework looks like. Most people just need a simple mental map. Oh, I get it. Leaders are supposed to do these 4 things, and this is what I need to do every single day. Okay, so we've got some other challenges, and we'll just talk through these quickly before we have some lunch. The first thing is what we call the emerging ages. So we've come through this, many years ago, hunters and gatherers, to agrarian, to the industrial age, to the knowledge worker age. You know what? We're in a different age today, and I like to call it the age of wisdom. See, what happened was we got increasing levels of productivity as we moved up to these ages. And when we got to the knowledge worker age, we thought we'd hit nirvana. We'd have more information coming at us than we have ever had in our entire lives. In fact, we are bombarded with information. The average human being in 24 hours will receive more information in one day than someone 200 years ago received in their entire lifetime. We are bombarded with information. Here's what we need today. We need wisdom. As a leader, you need to sort through that information and help your people know what matters and what doesn't. Because we have the illusion of productivity because we have an overwhelming amount of information. One morning I was driving to work and I heard one of the senior officers at Google. He was talking on an interview on the radio. And he said their challenge now, they've made information so available to people. But what they're doing is they're trying to cut it down so you only get what they think you want. The challenge is not information anymore, the challenge is wisdom. And so we're moving into this age of wisdom. How do we help people from all this information just understand the things that really matter most? As I mentioned, we have the illusion of productivity. This is like Gail, who's our mean manager. But let me tell you about Gail's day. No wonder she's cranky.